Welcome to class. We are going to start out by standing. This is called a Soma scan. So we're going to sense how our brain arranges us when we stand upright. So just don't think about how you're standing. If you are a yoga teacher, get rid of your yoga hat and just come in and stand. And once you come to a stop, just begin to bring your attention to how it is that you are standing. And this isn't about fixing anything that you notice. It's just notice and bank the information. So bringing your attention to how you are standing. Notice where the weight is on your feet. And if it doesn't throw your balance off, I invite you to close your eyes. If it does, just keep your eyes open. So coming back to noticing where the weight is on your feet. And just go for the details. So do you notice the weight in the front of your feet, in your toes? Or do you feel the weight into the heels? Maybe on the outer edges of feet or the inner edges. Or maybe one foot is doing something completely different with weight distribution than the other. So just take all of that in. Go for the details. And then bring your awareness slowly up to your pelvis. And notice how it sits on the top of your legs. At what angle does the pelvis situate itself? And how does that relate to your feet? How are your ribs resting? And what angle of rotation do you find the ribs? And as you breathe, how do your ribs move or not move? Notice the shoulders, the details of the shoulders, the arms, the hands. Is one arm touching the body differently than the other? Or not at all? Neck and head, where is it in space? So just bank all that information. We're setting the foundation of how you want to start each time you practice, is noticing how your brain arranges you when you are standing upright in gravity. So now we're going to start to talk about reflex patterns that we can become stuck in. So there are 3 predictable stress reflex patterns that we will come in and out of for the rest of our lives. And they're called the Landau reflex, or green light, the red light reflex, which is the startle reflex, and then the trauma reflex. It is the getting out of danger sort of reflex, or an accident, and you move away from the force that's coming at you. So why is it, when I say it's predictable, why is it predictable that we are going to be coming in and out of these reflexes? And it's because they are hardwired brainstem reflexes that are both useful and helpful. Outside of our awareness, these reflexes fire from the spinal cord of the cerebellum, our little brain, that has an important role in motor control. And therefore, when we get stuck in these patterns, it can make us feel like we are out of control and that our body is falling apart, often leaving us feel like we need someone to fix us. So we're going to try on these reflex patterns so you become familiar with them, and as you explore them, you might find, there's one or two or three that's relatable. So often we have one that's more dominant than the other, but you may find that you are a mix of all reflex patterns. So let's put on our curiosity hat and explore the first one that's called green light, the Landau reflex. So this is much like the stance of a soldier at attention. So go ahead and explore this in your own body. And what we'll do is we'll start to arch our back. Just think of the green light meaning go. So down the back line of our body, when we go to meet the demands in life, the muscles down the back line of the body fire to move us forward, okay? So what happens is when we are on demand to go, we put all our weight into our toes and we go into that soldier at attention like stance. And it's like the weight is being shifted into your toes because you're just ready for action. Okay, so I'm going to turn sideways for this and go ahead and start to put an arch in your back. So you're ready to go. Whew. What happens is that the shoulders get drawn back, the back begins to arch, the knees lock, and the toes the weight just transfers into the toes. I like to call it bird on a wire. And it's like they grip. Now I want you to notice that when you send the weight into your toes and how grippy they get, notice how the knees lock and the whole back line of the legs, right from your foot all the way up into your buttocks, start to tighten. And it also puts the pelvis into a tilt. And then further up, the back muscles all the way up, tighten. And then we need to bring our chin down, which ends up tucking it. And what happens is we tighten the neck muscles because we need to see forward, right? So you might find when you came into the green light reflex, your head went right up, or your vision went right up to the ceiling. But because we need to see, as Soma is, we need to see forward and go, we need to see ahead of us. So notice how that tightens the front of the throat as well. So just feeling how this shows up in your body. And then come out of that, because we don't want to get stuck in that pattern. So then we're going to explore another useful reflex called the startle reflex, and that's the red light reflex. And it's a protective mechanism. So if some loud bang went off behind you, you don't think about running for cover or ducking. There isn't that time. It's just hardwired into the system to fire and protect, right? So you often go into this maneuver that wants to protect the front of the body, right? All your vital organs. And this is also an increasing posture in today's society with all of, the sedentary lifestyle. So sitting for long periods of time in front of a computer, we're on our smartphones, we're on our tablets, so it's a posture of rounding forward. So feel that in your own body by starting sinking the belly in. So the belly sinks in, the chest is pulled down, it pulls the shoulders with you, and the knees will begin to bend and knock in, and you might feel that your feet just start to go kind of roll inwards, okay? So no, don't over exaggerate it, but notice in this computer slump how that limits your capacity to breathe. So come on out of that. And then we're going to explore one more stress reflex, and that's the trauma reflex. And the trauma reflex occurs in response to accidents or injuries, or it can be one-sided repetitive strain. So it's also an avoidance maneuver in which we twist and rotate to escape further injuries. So I'm thinking of an impact in a car accident, and you turn so quickly to move away from the accident that is happening. So when you habituate a trauma reflex pattern, you twist and you rotate, and this is a reflex pattern that can be brought on by, I said, repetitive work earlier. So think of professions that are always turning to one side. I used to think of me at my computer desk for over 2 decades, that I would sit in the red light reflex, but I'd also be turning and twisting favorably to one side based on the way my desk was set up. So let's try this on. So think of also too, if you injure one side of your body, so you sprain your ankle, or you break your leg, or you hip replacement, or knee surgery. So what you need to do is shift your weight to the other side of the body, right? To let the injured side heal. So then what happens is that weight gets placed all on the side, the strong side. And what it does is when it takes a weight, the muscles are supercharged, and you'll start to de-weight the injured side, or the side that's recovering. And then what happens on the strong side is the hip starts to hike up towards the armpit. The armpit starts to come down. So now we're getting into muscles of the side of the body. And then it takes the pelvis out of its alignment. And it's just like the whole one side is in this side bend. And it creates a leg length discrepancy. It creates an arm length discrepancy. And notice when you come into this, how it takes the shoulders off, and then it tilts the head. So it can create balance issues. So bringing the head back up, notice what it does to the neck. So it starts to shorten one side, so it contracts there as well. And then just sense and notice the feel when you come into this, how you start to twist through the center. And then come out of that, let's explore that on the other side. So sending all your weight into the other side. Coming into this lean, notice the hip, the waist muscles tighten, right? The oblique muscles tighten. And everything is just kind of taken off balance. So as I said earlier, these are useful reflex patterns to come in and out of, right? They're hardwired into our system, and they're there to get us going forward. They're there to protect us. They're there to get us all the jobs done that we need to do. And we're meant to move in all these different directions. We just don't want to have them, we just don't want to be repetitively stuck in them, right? So this class is teaching you how to get unstuck in these patterns so they're not long-standing, so that you start to take back control of your body. Because what can happen when you get stuck in these patterns for long standing, so think of the green light reflex and how it tightens the muscles down the back line of the body, we start getting issues like sciatica, lower back pain, neck and shoulder pain, herniated discs, jaw pain. So just to mention to a few of those, all because the on-demand muscles down the back line of the body are on all of the time, okay? And then when we get stuck in that red light reflex pattern, you know, it creates shallow breathing. We end up with hip knee problems, neck pain, TMJ disorder, tinnitus, which is ringing of the ears, abdominal discomfort, respiratory issues. So it's the affects all the musculature on the front line of the body. And then the trauma, right, it's about the sides. And so it involves improper leg length, as I mentioned earlier, and it creates an uneven gait, which will affect your balance, right? And so it's painful for the hips and the knees because it's like, you know, it's like a flat tire on a vehicle. So think of when you have one tire flat, think of how it skews everything else in the car. So there's more strain, right, in the system. Okay, so we are going to unravel these patterns of tightness so that you're not stuck into them. You don't become a slave to them. And you can start to stand up taller and breathe easier and move freer in your body. So what we're going to do is movements that, and I've come up with this little tagline I think is kind of catchy, is we're actually recreating the pattern and we're pendiculating so that we eliminate it. So think of recreate, pendiculate, and eliminate. So we've tried on the reflexes. Are there any that you're already going, I think I'm guilty of this one? So this is the first day of building your awareness and getting to know your internal process better. So that's what we're going to start with at each class is a standing Soma scan. But on your own at home, what I would like you to do is start building your awareness. So after today, after this first time you watch this video, start to build your awareness of how you stand and what little habits you have, okay? Noticing where you are in space. Okay, so now we're going to come to lie down and we're going to do another scan, and it's called a supine Soma scan. So as you are preparing to come down on the ground, I am going to be adjusting my camera so you can see me. Now, there are props that you might want to have nearby, just because we will be lying on our side at one point and you want to support your head. You want to make sure your spine is in a nice straight line when you're laying on your side. And just so think of the side sleepers, you want to have a pillow at the height that properly supports you. So I have a variety of props. Just grab whatever you have, pillows, blankets, and we'll make it work. So come on down onto the floor and I will adjust the camera. Okay, so hopefully this works out right, and it's not so important that you see me, right? It's important that you hear me, because you don't want to move like me, you want to move like you, right? You want to get connected to your own internal process. Connect to what your nervous system is doing, because this is not an exercise class, right? This is neuromuscular re-education, and I'm teaching you how to pendiculate your muscles, and that is what makes the change. So when you get stuck in these patterns of tightness, you pendiculate on a regular basis to come out of those stuck patterns of tightness. Okay, so when you're ready, come on and lay down. Oh, actually, before we lay down, I always like to throw this little friendly reminder that if you've got back issues, coming down sort of in that sit up and roll back position is not ideal for back pain. So what I would suggest is turn over onto your side and then roll over onto your back in that fashion. It's just kinder for your back. So then once you come down, we're going to talk about a way to lengthen the legs. So typically we would send the foot straight away and lengthen the legs. So try something new today. Let your knee slowly tip out just a little bit so that you're on the outer edge of your foot. And then slide the leg along slowly to lengthen it. And then tip the other knee out, just to roll out onto the other edge of the foot and slide the foot along. So you want to make sure whatever's on your feet, socks, or just your bare skin, you want to be able to have the freedom to slide your body nice and easy. So here we are, and this isn't about fixing anything either. And it's not about trying to put yourself in an ideal position. Just come and lay down. And we're going to set a baseline here by doing a lying down Soma scan. And just put your curious hat back on and get in touch with your internal sensations. So firstly, bring your awareness to your feet. And just notice how your heels are resting on the floor. And notice if you are on the center of your heels, if you're rolling out on the outer edges of the heels. Maybe one heel is completely different than the other heel. And then what does that do with the toes? So are the toes pointing straight up to the ceiling? Are they pointing out? Or is the toes on one foot pointing up and the toes on the other foot are pointing out? So again, just not to fix, it's just to notice. And if you can't, if you're sensing something but you're not really sure, and you want to take a peek, is sink your belly down a little bit to engage your abs to help you. Lift your head up, hands can help as well. Take a little peek and just see what it is you're looking at, and does that match what you're sensing? So you want to bank all this information so we come back to it and later on and see if anything has changed. So then begin to notice the weight of your legs. Noticing if there's more weight on one side. So there's more weight going into the left leg or the right leg. How do you feel that the lower legs making contact with the floor and the upper legs? Notice the pelvis. And does it feel like the pelvis is level, or does it seem to have more weight on one side than the other? Notice the low back, arch, no arch. Notice how the ribs make contact with the floor. Shoulder blades. So you're going for the details, you're sensing each side and then comparing. And if you're not really feeling the shoulder blades against the floor, maybe you're more of the chest and how that positions your shoulders. And then how are your arms resting on the floor? that position your hands? So are you on the back of the hands? Are the palms down? Or is one hand sort of on its side where the other hand is open? So is there a difference? And then notice how the back of your head rests against the floor. So if we were in a green light reflex pattern, our legs would be sort of rolling out with our toes more pointing out towards the base of our walls. And then you may feel like an arch underneath the back, and the shoulders back. So just think of that. Can you identify that soldier at attention position here? Chin tucked in. Or would you relate more to being in a red light pattern where the back is flattened against the floor somewhat, and maybe the shoulders are, more toward the ceiling. And then that shortens, the head moves, and that shortens the back of the neck. Maybe you feel the legs are more rolled inward. And maybe you feel a bend in the knees. So how might a trauma reflex pattern show up as it feels like you're shorter on one side of the body? So think of the space between the armpit and the hips. So if your one side was tighter and the hip was hiked up a little bit more towards the armpit, taking the pelvis in, it's off kilter, right? It's bringing it out of alignment. Or is it the other side? So you're just noticing, building your awareness of what it's like to explore the 3 different stress reflex patterns in your body while standing, and then how they might show up when you're lying on the floor that's supporting you, and your muscles need to, ideally they can just completely relax here because the floor is supporting your weight. But are they relaxed, or are they overworked? Are they contracted and holding you into any of these patterns? So just bank all that information. And then we're going to bend the legs one at a time, but you're going to bend them the same, similar to the way you release them, is you're just going to let your legs slightly roll out. You're going to drag the foot on the outer edge, and then you're going to let your knee come upright, and the same thing on the other side. And it might feel a little foreign at first. It's a different way to bend the legs, but you might find that it becomes your new favorite because it is kinder on the back. So when you come in a bent knee position, I want to help you find what neutral is. So let's explore first what neutral isn't to find your neutral. So if you were to slide your heels further away from your pelvis, notice how that starts to arch the back and tilt the pelvis. So now we're not in neutral. What if you were to bring your heels really close to your pelvis? Notice how that tightens the belly and smooshes your low back into the floor, and it tucks the pelvis. So that's not a neutral. So you just want to be somewhere in between where your pelvis isn't tilting and it's not tucking, and it's not tightening the front or the back any more than it might already be. So we're going to start out noticing the breath. And let's place our hands on our hips, or on our ribs. And we're going to start out with some rib breathing. But just first, bring your awareness into your breath. And just notice what your breath is doing now. Notice if you can feel your breath moving the ribs, if you feel any movement in the fronts or the side of the back. And then take your awareness into your lower back and notice when you inhale, can you feel just a subtle arch forming? So inhale, can you feel the back wanting to go into, almost like it just wants to lift away from the floor a little bit, and when you breathe out, you feel it settle back down. And if you can't feel it, welcome a yawn in, a deeper breath, and just see if that helps you feel that low back contracting, a subtle contraction and arching. And you're going to imagine your tailbone now like it's like a hook that it's going to root into the ground. And as it roots down into the ground, it's going to move the pelvis into a tilt, and it's going to let your low back go into an arch. So we're essentially recreating the green light reflex and then pendiculating it to come out of it. So let's put a little weight into our hands and use the hands as feedback as we move into this. So inhaling, so think of, let's give some direction here. Think of the tailbone as south, and think of the head is facing north. So you're going to let your tailbone roll south, okay? So start to inhale, press the tailbone down, and notice how it lures the low back off the floor, and the ribs will start to expand out into your hands. And notice what that does. It lifts the back, it arches it, it contracts it. Now you're going to slowly start to release out. And then you bring that contracted back right into a settled, a relaxed back. Let's try that again. So inhale and arch. So the tailbone goes south, the back lifts, the belly moves towards the ceiling. This time, let's let the shoulders move back, right? The soldier at attention. Shoulders back, and the chin comes down towards the chest. Notice what's contracted in the back line of the body, and slowly release out. So now we are pendiculating the muscles in the back line of the body. We are pendiculating the green light pattern. So how we are doing that is 3 phases. First, tightening it by arching and contracting the back. Then secondly, it's a slow controlled release. And then thirdly, it's complete relaxing. So let's try that again. Inhale, rolling the tailbone south, letting the belly soften and expand, letting the low back arch, letting the shoulder blades move into the floor, and letting the chin bow down towards the chest. And then slowly belt on out. So just notice what the quality is like and releasing out. Notice if it's smooth or if it's a little jerky. And don't over effort. These are, I might be exaggerating a little bit here just in case you are watching, but really these are subtle movements. And if you have muscles that are already contracted in your body, it's not going to take much more when you go into that arch for them to contract. So less effort, okay? So let's try that again. Inhale and arch. Letting the ribs expand out. Feel the openness across your chest. The back line of your body is contracting while the front line is relaxing. And now you're going to slowly keep your awareness on what's contracting in your back to slowly let it go. Let everything go. Now we're going to take it the other way, and we're going to explore going into the red light, the startle reflex, the computer slump. So we're going to use the weight of our hands to guide the ribs with this. Because when we get stuck in a red light pattern, it tightens the belly and it pulls the ribs down, it pulls the chest down, and it pulls the shoulders forward. So let's take a breath in to get ready. And on the exhale, let your back, your low back arch sink into the floor. Notice how that starts to tighten the belly. And use the weight of your hands to guide the ribs down towards the pelvis. And notice that the pelvis is tucking. And the shoulders roll up off the floor. So we're short at the front and long at the back. Slowly release out. And just breathe as needed through this. So I cue the breath going into the movement, and then sometimes when I get talking, I won't cue the breath again, but just don't ever hold it, because if you're holding the breath, you're contracting. Let's try that again. Use the weight of the hands on the ribs to glide them down, not straight down to the floor, but bowing down towards your pelvis. Take a breath in to get ready. On your exhale, sink your back, sink your stomach, sink your ribs. Let the pelvis tuck in. Notice if the shoulders want to round forward. And let the chin tilt up towards the ceiling. And then slowly release out. You can see how that really impacts the breathing. It's hard to breathe when you are in a shortened, contracted pattern at the front of the body. Inhale to get ready. Exhale, sink. Moving in your comfortable range of motion. Slow control release. So you begin to soften the belly, you begin to soften the ribs, you begin to soften the chest. And then just let the arms rest along the floor. Tip one knee out, slide on the other edge of the foot to lengthen the leg. Settle it, and then do the same on the other side. So we're coming back to where we started in our opening Soma scan. So whatever you may mental note of on what you noticed, what do you notice now? And has anything changed for you? And then let's rebend the legs. And then let's just go in, giving yourself some time to self-explore this. Let's go into the arch and release, or going into that green light pattern. Then we're melting out. And then we're going to go down into that red light reflex, so flattening. So you want to make sure you release out of the arch before you go into the flatten. So I'll guide you through the first one, and then just start to explore a couple on your own. So your hands, you can keep your arms on the floor, or if you felt that was nice for you to have them on your belly or your ribs, go for it. So inhale, we're coming into the arch. So we're rolling, tilting the pelvis, arching the back. Shoulders move into the floor, chin comes down to the chest, and then slowly melt on out. And once you've released out of that, you want to give yourself time by taking a rest breath to make sure everything that you tighten in the back has released. And then let's go into this flattened position. So inhale to get ready. And on the exhale, start to flatten your back, sink your belly, sink your ribs. Let your shoulders slope forward. Let your chin tilt up towards the ceiling. Notice the tightness at the front, and then slowly release the tightness. And then just go ahead and explore that a couple times on your own. Be completely aware of how you're moving, completely aware of your internal sensations. Slow and subtle. Effortless effort. Finish off the one that you're on now. Don't rush, take the time you need to complete it. And then we're going to slowly roll over and rest on our sides. So this is where you will want to have a prop underneath your head. So grab what you have available to create a nice supportive pillow, and then come and lie down on your side. So we're going to work with some rib breathing here, and we're going to get into the sides of the body. And between our ribs are our intercostal muscles, and they can often get tight. And if we have a tight rib cage, it can really have an impact on how we breathe. So get comfortable and watch when you come onto your side that you're not in that fetal position, right? And you're not in that green light position. Just try and find your true side, where you feel your hips are nicely stacked on top of one another, and your shoulders are stacked on top of one another. So you're nice and open at the front. And then we're going to take our hand and we're going to place it right on the ribs. So whatever hand position is more comfortable for you. If you find that it's uncomfortable to have your arm in this position, then don't keep it there for too long. Take it out. So we're just resting the hands on wherever you can on the side ribs, And you're going to use the weight of your hand to guide the ribs down towards your hips. So it's like we're recreating that trauma reflex. So when we were standing, we were exploring sinking into that little side bend, right? So we're recreating the pattern of tightness to come out of it. This is called rib pendiculation. So just first notice when you breathe in, can you feel on the breath in, can you feel the ribs expanding? Can you feel it pushing your hand up? And you might not at first, so I like to do a little tap, tap, tap to start bringing your attention, bring your brain's awareness to the sides. Okay, so let's take a breath in and invite it to come into the ribs and let the rib spaces open up, almost like vertical blinds, right? Or sorry, horizontal blinds, Venetian blinds, whatever image works for you. Inhale, these blinds are open up, the rib spaces are opening up. And then on the exhale, use the weight of your hand to guide the ribs down as if they're bowing down towards your hip. And you might notice that it de-weights your head. The head automatically comes up. And then slowly release out. Try not to over effort with your arm and creating tension there. We're just really just using this as weighted guide. Take another breath in. Open up the rib spaces. And on the exhale, guide the ribs down. So you're tightening, you're shortening this side. And notice, keep breathing, notice what happens on the other side. So the side you're lying on, what happens to those ribs? And then slowly release out. Inhale to get ready. Exhale, guide the ribs down toward the waist, toward the hips. Let your head come along if it wants, if that's comfortable for you. Stay at the top and notice how short it is on this side, and then breathe into the bottom side ribs. Breathe into those spaces into the floor. And then begin to send the breath back over to this shortened side and invite the space to come back in with the breath. Relax the arm long aside your body for a moment. And then let's take the prop away from underneath the head. Roll over onto your back. And then tip one knee out, slide the leg long, same with the other, and just take a few moments to notice what one side of the body feels like compared to the other. So what sort of awareness do you have in the center of your body, in your ribs, in your breathing? And does one side feel completely different than the other? I know mine does. It feels open on one side and crumpled on the other, like the other side is jealous. So we're going to rebend the legs, roll onto the other side. So I'm just going to turn myself around. So get comfortable here, and again, finding your true side. Notice what it's like when you come on this side, if it's different than lying on the other side, and get your props in place to keep you comfortable. And then once you're settled, let's start tapping this side of your ribs to bring some awareness in. And then let your hand provide some weight. So we're just noticing what the movement is like. If you can feel the ribs moving or not. What's your internal sensations? All right, so let's begin by taking a breath in and filling up these rib spaces, letting them expand. And then on the exhale, we're guiding the ribs down. It's like we're closing the blinds and we're shortening this side. It's like a drawstring, right? That's moving the armpit down towards the hip. My head automatically just popped up, so just don't let it, if that happens for you, let it go for the ride. If it's uncomfortable and it needs that support, if you're over efforting, by all means bring the head back down. And then when you release, you start to let the breath come into each of these rib spaces and open up. Because you don't want to be stuck in that crumpled up, shortened position. Again, take a breath in, fill up the rib spaces. Exhale, guide the ribs down. Sink them down towards your hips. So we're closing off this side, shortening it, and the other side. Notice if you can feel how that's lengthened on the other side. And then slowly offer that lengthening back to this side. So the ribs move away from the hips. They open up. Even the armpit moves away. Again, inhale to get ready, filling the ribs up. Exhale, guiding the ribs down. Feel the air squeezing out of this top side. Bring your awareness to the bottom side ribs and send all your breath in and out of that side. And then inhale, releasing out, letting this side open back up. And release. So as you start to create a new practice of somatics, or you may be returning to your practice or here to strengthen your practice, and just keep in mind that it's not about doing the movements over and over and over again. So these are pendiculations and they're quite powerful. So we really only need to do a few of each. So we only did 3 on the first side, we did 3 on this side. And that's really all you need to do. You might do up to 5, but don't do, it's not about repetition, right? This isn't an exercise, right? So it's quality movement over quantity and your full brain's awareness. So let's turn over back onto our back and then just notice what you're experiencing now. And if take one knee out, straighten the leg, and the other. And then just notice a few short moments ago I felt really unequal and scrunched on one side. And now for me personally, it's a match on each side. So notice what you notice. What is present now in your somatic sensing, in your Soma, that is you, your living body. And I invite you, if You notice that because there isn't a lot of movement, we're not generating a lot of heat, you might have become a little chilled. So if there isn't enough clothing to keep you warm, then it's always a good idea to have a blanket nearby to cover up. So we're just gonna wrap up in just marinating in our internal sensations and just really being aware of what we are sensing now, where we came, what we came to the floor with, and what is showing up now. Let's take 5 complete breaths here before we come up to standing. By all means, if laying here with your legs extended is not usually a comfortable position for you, this is another place where you can put your props under the back side of your knees to take any pressure off that you might feel in your back.